Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is those people in the last rows, you're awfully far away from us. So could I ask you to join us a little bit up front here? There's so many empty spaces, and it's so much nicer to just be a little closer. Oh, thank you so much. You're a big sport. Give them a big applause for moving and coming up here. Yeah, and there. And please, for everybody who's just coming in, also join us up here. Wonderful. Oh, and everybody is getting ready. I see some strategizing on both sides. One of the teams seems to be already prepared. They are already at the table. The other team is still sitting in the background on the back seats, doing strategy, writing things down. But I guess they are also almost ready. But as always, before I hand over to our wonderful moderator, I would like to introduce her. What have you? Wow. Wow, lots of preparation here at the table. Yes. I also see a timekeeping and questions and so on. I wish...
Big time. That's basically what I'm here for. I'm like a human stopwatch.
Aha, yeah. And we also have somebody who's going to help you. Yeah, I bet our teams would have loved to have your notes beforehand, but we're not going to share this. But come on.
I'm happy to do that.
Like, leave your little table.
My little note.
So, thank you so much for doing it again.
My pleasure.
We did it
last time, but we were just saying that, for those of you who are uninitiated, this is the highlight of the conference, and that's why we're doing it the second time over.
Yeah. And you just hopped back to Berlin from where?
Copenhagen.
Yes. What did you do in Copenhagen?
I was trying to explain to the Danes, in a huge moment of relief, what is going on in Germany as opposed to what's going on in the transatlantic relationship, which I found to be very heartening compared to, the axis that we usually have to span. So. Great. That was actually, I was the good news brigade for a while. I never get to be anymore.
Very nice. And I know that I introduced you last year already, but not everybody was here. You are a true transatlantische Pflanze, transatlantic plant, with parents from both sides of the Atlantic. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Wiesbaden, but mainly surrounded by an American military base, in an American military hospital, in an American military high school. I was christened in a church I no longer get to visit because my mother has left the Pentagon. So, both worlds very, very early. And also the DoD perspective, also very specific.
And then you spent a big part of your professional career in media, but also in academics.
Yeah.
And the university you worked for and spent a lot of time was, or is?
Oh, the most rebellious place on the planet, Harvard University.
So I think you are also somebody to talk to get a little bit of a feeling what's currently happening in the United States on academic grounds. Are you happy to live here now?
Yes, I'm happy to be in a place where I can completely express myself freely without my social media being censored or my devices being taken away when I cross the border. I find that to be very relieving.
And but you also like to go home to the States?
I am. I'm almost on a plane again to Chicago and Illinois, or Chicago, Illinois, but then Indiana, Idaho, California. You got to go. You still have to be there. You got to go. You got to listen. You got to be present. Otherwise, you don't know. As Aspen does so beautifully around the country and every place and every deep pocket of the United States. Now more than ever, frankly.
Yeah, and I think we are almost going to be at the same time in Idaho later on this month. What do you expect to get out of this debate?
This is the best job here today, and I say this without hubris because I have to have absolutely no knowledge coming into this conversation, and you don't either, because you will be enlightened by fierce trade-off of arguments and perspectives. So I expect to learn a lot.
Me too. And what scares you most about the debate?
Look, that, this is funny that they asked someone like me, who for almost 13 years ran a program on diplomacy, to help try to figure out sides on how AI will change warfare, where I'm always wondering, well, what about the civil aspects of strategy? What about preventing war? So I don't know if anybody in this team is going to touch on that, but there you go.
And with this, I hand it over in yours because I'm losing my voice anyways.
No, it's been a long day.
Thank you very much for doing this. I look forward to a great debate.
Yeah, no, same here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So without further ado, I am not exaggerating. I'm basically a humanoid timekeeper for the next 90 minutes. But it is really an exciting format. So if you've never been part of an Oxford-style debate, you will be overjoyed because you have an active role in this. The active role that you will play in the next couple of minutes is that you will have to vote on the issue that we are dealing with. And depending on the vote, these two teams will either be spurred on in the level of their and depth of their argumentation, or they know that they have a relatively easy task, which is to keep you in your opinion. So that we'll see in just a moment. But when Stormy and Molly and other people put this debate together with this crisp title, "Will AI win the next war?" I'm pretty sure they didn't know that we were going to be, again, in a kinetic war in the Middle East, where technology plays such an overarching role, not just on the intelligence piece, but then, of course, on targeting, on preemptive components, and on figuring out whether or not, possibly, you're running up against statutes of international warfare in using this technology. So some of what we're going to be talking about is finding rapid application on the battlefield in two hot conflicts now, not least, of course, in Ukraine and Russia, where drone and drone-stewarded warfare is what the Ukrainians have gone with because, let's face it, we as the West denied them a lot of air power and air power cover in a way that we ourselves would never wage conflict. And I think that's a lot of the debate that we are having now and we will have over the next day and a half at The Hague. So this could not be a more contemporary or timely debate. There's a private sector and money-making aspect to this. If you read the business pages, you will have noted last week the massive investments that German startup drone-making startup Helsing got. And some people on this panel, I'll name who later, have an affiliation there and a perspective there, so that'll be interesting as well. So to kick things off, you have to do some work. You have to do a little bit of reflection, which is to say that while I filibuster and introduce these debaters to you, you will be tasked to use your devices. There we go. See, everybody's been well trained throughout the day. Excellent. To begin to vote on this question, will AI win the next war? And I will tell you what the questions are that were, yes, you have to scan, by the way, look at the panelists. I don't know if you guys are exempted from this, but maybe not. Maybe the one or two votes will sway the vote. Oh, yes, right, yes. Just checking the technology. Of course, Frank, that makes sense. Okay, so we have team one, I'm calling them the no team, right, which is arguing while AI is an important tool, industrial capacity, logistical superiority, and the ability to, and the willingness to sustain losses, there's a lot in there, are more important to winning a war. So the AI is not the fundamental component, that's the no team, that's team one. Team two is focusing on, yes, AI is more than just an important tool. It's critical for developing smarter strategies, more advanced weapons, and thereby key for winning future wars. That's the yes team. So in case you're confused as to who's who and you're voting just on looks, this is the no team.
We win.
And this is the yes team. Okay? So I know how this works. Donald Trump is president. I have to talk about it all the time. So, all right, so with that, you have 5 minutes to vote, while I have 5 minutes to take you through the biographies of these debaters. I will note that their full biographies, by the way, which are worthy reading, are in your programs. So we'll start with the no team, and we'll do it in the way, we'll do it in the way that everybody's sitting, just so it's clear. So Tricia Ray's on the outside. She's an associate director, resident fellow at the Geotech Center at the Atlantic Council. She was, before that, a fellow at the Observer Research Foundation at the Center for Security, Strategy, and Technology. And most importantly, maybe for this conversation, she's a member of UNESCO's Information Accessibility Working Group. So welcome, Tricia. Next to her is Dr. Joseph Verbowski, and I'm sure I just mangled your name, and I apologize for that, Joseph.
All the time.
Well, you know, me too, so you and me both. He's a research fellow at Defense and AI at the Defense AI Observatory. He's co-director of the Wargaming Center, the German Wargaming Center, and knows the defense industrial complex extremely well. He's worked in strategic analysis for a number of defense companies, so interesting to note that he's on the no team. Konstanz Schucholowski is next to him. She's digital and tech policy expert at Candid Public Affairs. That's her own public affairs company, which she founded. She's a political campaign junkie and has run them, has managed them, has seen all the good, the bad, and the ugly from the inside. And she really is a deep expert in tech and digital services. We should note that she changed sides on this debate. So I don't know what that means for the strength of her arguments, but you get to decide that. And then last but not least is Matthias Klaus, who's an expert in the triad of ethical AI, cybersecurity, and risk analysis. So I'm glad we're bringing ethics into the conversation. He's a senior business analyst at Capgemini, an expert on digital ethics with experience, and here is my little piece, at German AI startup Helsing, former Bundeswehr soldier as well. So that is your no team. Coming here to the yes team, you have just a few more minutes left to make up your mind, so I hope you're very close. I'll do it back to front here. Dr. Frank Sauer, who was known to many of you who follow these debates in the public domain as a senior research fellow at the Universität der Bundeswehr. He's a very well-known IR and defense scholar, and he focuses on the military application of AI and robotics and has a number of award-winning books. Many of you may have read them. I'll go to Britta Jakob, who's on my left. She leads government relations at ARX Robotics and was senior manager for geopolitical and global affairs previously at Bayer. Then Matthias Lehner over there, say hello, Matthias, is the director of business development and government relations at Quantum Solutions. And here we get to the Bundeswehr part of Team Yes. That's sort of beyond Frank's research experience too, the practical piece, because Matthias was deployed for NATO and UN missions with direct knowledge of intel usage in high-pressure situations. And next to him is a veteran of this debate stage, Lorenz Lehmhaus, associate partner, Gen AI at IBM, previous experience in the defense industry as well, and was a reservist in the German Bundeswehr, where he led innovation projects on unmanned systems. So you see, you have the best combination of people up here. Your applause is theirs for now. All right, can we see the results of our vote so that they know what they're up against? Ooh, this is going to be interesting. That is not a big margin. Okay, great. I'm looking forward to this now. Fantastic. Okay, so we have very strong and very stringent rules of the game, which I will try to enforce. The important part for my teams is that in your first 16-minute opening pitches, both teams have 8 minutes. You have to figure out your own timing of your 8 minutes. I will cut you off when the 8 minutes are entirely up, but the baton passing between the four of you is up to you. Good? Okay. I should have done a coin toss, but I haven't, so I am going to... Okay, you guys go first. Okay, and with that, you have opening pitches for 8 minutes each. Then we will have a round where we basically get to answer questions and answers, where they really get to go after each other. That's the really fun part, just for you to get yourself ready. And then we will go into audience questions, we'll come back, we'll do rebuttals, and then we'll wrap. Does that make sense? Everybody ready? So that's all to say that you have a very active part. So we'll start with this team, and your time starts now.
Well, thank you very much, Catherine. I would say we take an ecosystem approach to this topic. That means that technological advance, which would include AI in this case, is just one part of a broader consideration. And technology falls under hard factors. Additional hard factors would be industrial capacity and organization. organization includes, for example, how you organize your armed forces to integrate such technology. Additionally, you also have soft factors such as culture, which can also include, for example, social acceptability of technology, which can play either a, shall we say, what's the word? A slowing down role or a speeding up role. My English this evening is actually kind of funny. And also how you imagine to incorporate this technology. Additionally, you also have your experience, so from conflicts, and that also plays a role that's a little different. And to give you an example of how such a technological ecosystem works, we have an example, Blitzkrieg, right? So that people kind of know is the development of offensive tactics in World War II. But actually what it is it was culture, so it was tactics from the Eastern Front, mainly cavalry tactics from World War I, mixed together with ubiquitous technology and mechanization, so radio and tractors, which then became tanks. And that allowed new operational concepts to be developed that favored offense instead of defense. So that's just sort of a little example. Currently, in terms of AI, what we've observed, because we did a study on this, is actually there's a little bit of a sort of jockeying around a position mostly focused on how the US is using AI. And that's actually quite interesting because it seems that there might be a sort of reluctance to test the first mover advantage, right? So the first person to break out with a new strategic concept, new way of organizing their forces and deploying AI seem to be kind of still orienting themselves on competitors and on each other. So I think that that's kind of the perspective that we're going to start with. So going over to you.
So audience, I believe in the wisdom of crowds, and your vote today reflects the ground reality of the wars that we bear witness to today. It is a mixed bag. Machiavelli said that success in wars is determined by the political advantages gained, not by victorious battles. What core truths do we know about war? Well, we know that wars are fought for specific reasons. They're shaped by collective human behaviors that are difficult to datify or predict. The second point I'll make for your consideration, absolute superiority in AI is impossible, no matter what people tell you. AI as a capability is not under the control of one single country. And as the US has found in the case of semiconductors, for example, you cannot deny your opponents access to AI and the capabilities to build it. Unlike, for example, in the first technological offset, nuclear weapons, where we saw the restriction of this groundbreaking technology. And so for these two reasons, I present to you why our side is correct.
As my colleagues have mentioned, we are not here to deny that AI is an important tool and will continue to grow in the importance for winning wars. It is a tool that levels the playing field for warring parties, and with that, complicating and protracting wars. That level playing field placed an increasing emphasis on the efficacy of outmatching and outlasting an opponent with conventional warfare, as my colleague Josef has already said, with the use of tanks, logistics, tactics, loss-making, and loss-taking. I'd like to focus on the latter because the others have already been covered. AI is important. It is not decisive, yet a high tolerance for loss-making and loss-taking is. It's protracted recent conflict and it's stunted effective diplomacy, not despite, but because of its effectiveness as a tool of war, albeit a miserable and, in many respects, unlawful one. This is also one reason why calls for AI as a savior to increase precision or preciseness are often disingenuous, and why we haven't seen precision improve in practice despite the use of AI.
Okay, then last, I got 3 statements. First, the normative statement, saying that decisions ranging from the tactical all the way to the strategic or political level always require adequate human oversight and/or control. Meaning we are humans as moral actors. AI is not and cannot be that, but can have moral impacts. Hence, our value system and normative arguments do not allow for full autonomy of weapon systems, decision-making processes, etc. in most cases. That is also why we must prevent moral de-skilling by enforcing conscious human control using AI as a tool, as we argue. Second, robustness. AI is notoriously brittle, especially under novel situations and under uncertainty. Leaving aside adversarial attacks, there are plenty of examples, even in recent conflicts like Lavender Performance. The fog of war is a prime example for this kind of uncertainty and requires human gut instinct and flexibility. Again, AI can be an augmenting tool, but is not the key. Closing, we argue that not having AI will be a deciding disadvantage in the future. However, having AI does not equal having the key, but only one important pillar among others in a mutually supporting ecosystem as a foundation for victory. Thank you.
All right, you guys are 2 minutes under. Which is to say, if you have other things to add, you can.
We're good.
I'm not going to give them 2 extra minutes, so don't worry. But counting 3, counting 2, counting 1. Okay. And with that, I'm resetting my timer. Over to you guys.
So what happens with Russia's war in Ukraine is integral to our future security. And it shows how rapidly modern warfare is developing. Emerging defense technologies play an important role in this. We need cost-effective, scalable, modular, AI-enabled systems to close military capability gaps and to multiply our current forces. This is what drives us at ARX Robotics, also our partners from the USXS Alliance, like Quantum Systems, my colleague here. So is it good to be in an AI arms race? No, but we are in this race, and it would be worse to lose it. We can start to adapt and compete, or we can simply admire the problem. I want to argue for overcoming status quo thinking. Let's seize the opportunities that lie in AI-powered battle networks and smarter strategies. What are the concrete advantages? First of all, AI-driven systems reduce human exposure to danger while increasing operational efficiency. AI can protect the lives of our soldiers and civilians. Second, enhanced strategic decision-making due to much faster data analyzing, processing, and bringing autonomous sense-making to command and control. The enormous amount of collected data we see in Ukraine is already a huge asset for wargaming or for military planning. Third, improved obstacle detection and threat monitoring. And fourth, AI can also decept tactics and neutralize traditional electronic warfare methods. So we need to harness this technological edge by developing, testing, refining, and deploying AI-powered technologies, and by upgrading our legacy systems. We need an unmanned revolution in efficiency and safety, and we need it fast. AI is critical for that. Thank you.
Just jumping in then. So Team 1 argues that industrial capacity, logistical superiority, and the willingness to sustain losses are paramount to winning a war. While acknowledging the historical significance of these factors, we contend that AI is not merely an important tool. It is the critical differentiator that actually redefines and amplifies these very elements, making very key victory in future conflict. Let's be clear. In the 21st century, the nature of sustaining losses has fundamentally changed. Humans are our most valued resources. This is exactly why actually AI has to be in the very much front lines to initial the first contact with the enemy. So basically, this means that we can actually sustain more losses if they are not human, but machines, and then inflict the pain on the other ones. Furthermore, this is actually not a theoretical debate of the future. Our adversaries are already integrating and deploying AI at scale in the military operations. However, I must be fair, it's not just about the quantity of AI, but also the quality. So true long-lasting superiority on the battlefield will actually come from rigorous data and AI governance, ensuring that actually the algorithms are robust, ethical, and reliable. Ultimately, all this investment in quality and AI data that we're sort of experiencing right now, there's huge money flowing into this. It just becomes money down the drain if it's not secured appropriately with the right technological mechanisms. Therefore, it's not just an important tool, it's a strategic imperative. It's how we protect the most valuable asset, our soldiers. And it's how we ensure that we're not outmaneuvered or outmatched by those already embracing the technology for future warfare, securing a qualitative edge that lasts.
Okay, I'm jumping in. I don't want to convince you with bringing in more buzzwords or more like experience from an expert. I want to convince you with the story I went through when I was first in the site of this group in back 2023, when I was first visiting Ukraine. I was visiting our managing director there with our service and support hub and running our drone fleet there and asking a lot of questions about where's the AI, where is the drone warfare, where is this all happening? And he showed me just a room full of broken wings, and he said, we need more rugged material. That was the status 2023. He told me what we need right now is not future talk. He said to me, you are doing future talk, we need solutions now, give us more rugged material. That was 2023. But I knew back then we couldn't change anything by just getting better material. We have to change a lot more to bring a better product with a better market fit, to have more advantage on the battlefield and everything else. So we switched a lot. We switched not only the material, we switched and adapted a lot on the software side. And in the end, we see now the usage of our products in a way where I believe AI will bring us on the next level. And let me explain you why. Right now, our systems are used to detect enemy systems. They are surveilling them for a longer time of period. They are looking for patterns they are running through, and then they are striking at one strike. And this is something where I believe AI is really helpful in the future because that's simple pattern recognition. And if we implement AI on that, what they are already surveilling right now, we will have a huge advantage, and I believe AI will help to get this on the next level in a way we haven't experienced before. So the talk right now is not about more rugged material, even in Ukraine with our managing director. The talk is about how we can implement software which enables our systems to get more connected to each other, which enables to get automated pattern recognition and everything else connected to that.
Okay, I think that's actually a great idea to start with a personal anecdote. So just in case you don't know, I normally would be sitting on this team. Okay, I've been spending almost 20 years of my life discussing in highfalutin academic papers what the risks are of using AI in the military, and especially of what is called autonomy in weapon systems. However, I changed my mind, and so should you. And I'm going to tell you really briefly why. Because autonomy in weapon systems does two things. First of all, it renders remote control links obsolete, okay? So you do not necessarily have to have a human operator on your system. And that means that your system cannot be jammed, cannot be spoofed, and is not susceptible to electronic warfare of the enemy, which means it will complete the mission even if you lose contact with that system. So that's one. And two, autonomy in weapon systems meaning automated target recognition in your systems will immensely compress the time you need to complete the kill chain. So you will be faster in finding, fixing, tracking, selecting, and engaging your enemy if you use this. And so the team is, of course, correct. We will still need legacy pieces. We will need artillery. We will need tanks. We will need soldiers. But all your artillery pieces will burn, all your tanks will explode, and all your soldiers will be dead if you are not using AI as the key enabler to modern warfighting. And that's that.
Well, that was as vivid as it comes, and this team used their full 8 minutes, almost on the dot. So now comes the fun time when they all go at each other head to head, which is the time where we have questions from this team to that team and vice versa. You guys get to ask this team questions first, because that is now fresh in everyone's mind, and you might have direct criticism, and then we'll switch. 6 minutes on the clock, if I can manage to run my clock, and go.
Start from that end then.
Okay. I'd like to ask regarding the reoccurring theme of pattern recognition, automated targeting. While true, it can accelerate the decision-making process and arguably do large parts unknown, but if we still have human in the loop, a vivid example would be, for example, relevant targeting systems employed by Israel. The reports have indicated that the relative time the operator has to assess and follow on the recommendations done by the system is in the seconds. They have a few dozen seconds at best to assess the validity of the proposition by the AI system that is prone to risks and lead to failures and undermines the whole concept of having meaningful control. And second, the idea of getting drones leading to lesser risks or casualties might be true for your own side. But what about the lowered entry to war argument? And if the other side adapts to it, it only leads to more examples, as we see already, of enemy fighters dropping uniforms, hiding among civilian population, and trying to confuse pattern recognition in order to blend in with the environment.
You guys have 30 seconds to add to anything. They get 4 minutes to respond. Do you have anything to add to that question?
Just one question. Just this.
Yep.
Sorry, no.
No.
No? Good. You guys have 4 minutes to respond.
Question number 1 regarding pattern recognition and automated target recognition. So as I said, I'm well aware of the risks. I kind of made it my business to talk about them. But the thing you really need to understand is that, and that's really, I think, where you're very wrong, is that there won't be a human in the loop. In fact, we haven't had a human in the loop for decades in many applications. And so looking at this topic through a human in the loop paradigm, or even human on the loop paradigm, is wrong. You won't be able to really fathom what's going on, and you will not be able to use this technology in a responsible manner, nor will you be able to regulate it if it ever comes to that at the international stage in any meaningful way. And so how should we be looking at it? We shouldn't be looking at it in terms of humans being in the loop, meaning humans being necessarily in a position where they have to make decisions to complete the kill chain. We should be looking at it through the prism of what is called meaningful human control, which is actually a standing concept, which takes into focus the whole human-machine team. And if you set this up properly, you can use autonomy in weapon systems in specific situations for specific periods of time in a way that makes it responsible. And what do I mean by responsible? I mean in a way that is compliant, first and foremost, with the rules of international humanitarian law, so that, for instance, civilians are not, harmed in any undue manner, and also in a way that we, deem correct with regards to the ethics and values that we also, hopefully are defending rather than giving up. And so I agree with you that the Israeli lavender GoDaddy situation is a problem, but the problem is not the technology. The problem is that it was used in an irresponsible manner, and it was a breakdown of meaningful human control in reality, because it wasn't foreseeable for the people making these split-second decisions that you were describing, where the bomb in the end would be landing. And if you ask me, that's not the way to do it. And that is really the key. So it doesn't argue against using AI. It argues strongly for using AI the proper way and the responsible way. And I think I've answered both questions at once, because the second question was with regard to the risks to the civilian population. And I think if you do it right, there are no additional risks. In fact, it could be argued that if you use, say, a loitering munition or a strike drone that you send some way, and then for the last 300 meters or so, you lose contact with that system because there's this electronic warfare bubble of the enemy basically preventing, as I was saying before, this remote control link. But the human and the machine basically have, decided that that is in fact the target that is about to, get defeated. Let's say, for reasons of simplicity, a T-90 tank. Then even if there's no more communication with the system will complete the mission and will defeat that tank. And you could say, well, we don't want that. We want humans in the loop. We want the human to always be there, until the end of basically mission completion. But I would argue, what's the alternative? The alternative to not using the system is lobbing 10 artillery grenades this way. And so if you're saying, what if this system accidentally, plows into a VW Beetle that just happens to drive along, and then I would say, we might just as easily, or even be more likely to blow up that VW Beetle than the tank, because we've trained the munition to only defeat tanks and not VW Beetles. And so it is a trade-off, but I'm coming back again to, we can't, as I think Britta put it very aptly, we can't remain in a position where we admire the problem. We have to figure out how to use it and use it in a responsible manner, and that will also give us the military edge that we're looking for to win.
And that's time. Okay, other way around. One question, one coordinated question for 2 minutes, or 2 minutes of questioning time and 4-minute response time starts now.
All right, basically, there is a two-part question here. The first one is, and I fundamentally disagree, is the first statement that AI is not under the under the control of one country. You mentioned it. I think this is absolutely flawed, but please elaborate on that one. And also the what's wrong with the social acceptance of this technology. I think so far it has been doing pretty good, and it keeps people off from harm distance. So please elaborate on this.
Okay.
I have another question.
Oh, you guys, go ahead, go ahead.
Why do you think both Russia and Ukraine are using automated target recognition as of now in the conflict they're fighting?
Okay, that was concise. Anything else to add? Good. Yes, please do. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, could you please elaborate the use cases? We were talking about the pattern recognition for automated target recognition, but I think there are way more simple ways to use AI to make a simple system more autonomous. So we're talking about pattern recognition in flight behavior, for example. So nothing which is really that ethical to be discussed.
All right, 4 minutes. Over to you.
I can start on the supply chain question. So what do you think artificial intelligence is built on? It's not just training data sets. You need chips, you need critical minerals, you need people to want to come to your country to build those systems. All of these are not just tech factors. These are logistical issues, these are immigration issues, these are industrial capacity issues. AI is built on all of these capabilities. It is not a technology that you can simply control, because all of these factors that go into it cannot be controlled. But thank you for the question. I really wanted to make that point. The Ukraine question.
Yeah, I think there was a question between about what our problem is with AI, something along those lines. I think the group stated multiple times that we see a huge value in AI, but rather that we see other factors of war that are even more important for the potential to win war, right? The premise of the question was, what is going to win us a war? And thank you, Frank, for the multiple arguments about why AI will contribute to that. But I think one argument specifically that was a point that was made by me was the loss-taking argument, for example, and the loss-making argument that, and I think the point, Lorenz, was made very well by you, that eventually it could be simply systems attacking one another. So you are removing the loss-taking entirely. I think that's something that surely we all in this entire room, not just the groups debating, would view positively. Then still countries would likely create some sort of factor in war that makes it more costly than just losing machines. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, that would be the loss of people, the thing we care most about. So how AI would stop us or facilitate doing that is surely vital, but still the most important thing, or one of the most important factors, would be how willing we are to affect or impact attrition.
Yeah. Following suit, it was said that autonomous systems could execute the mission even when they're entering electronic warfare zones. That might be true. That doesn't mean they're secure from attacks or spoofing. There have been regular reports done by the Winn Corporation, for example, about adversarial attacks, which could be prevented by exercising meaningful human control, which we agreed on. And the other part is, I think the last question was regarding the use in Ukraine.
I'll take the terminal guidance one. So the terminal guidance, which is then the use of drones, essentially when they're jammed or when there's no longer a computer link or a remote link that they can then complete the mission on their own. This has been used by both Ukraine and Russia. What's also interesting, however, is they use a lot of FPV drones with fiber optic cables. A little bit more low tech, but there are now forests or webs of these fiber optic cables everywhere. And in many ways, these low-tech variants accomplish similar functions. And so that's kind of a question of why do we see more FPV drones with fiber optic cables with people flying them, which is, again, we're focusing on the human factor. You need drone pilots for this. And sure, AI is part of the solution, but there's also a very real human component here in this case, and use of ubiquitous technology. Again, I bring it back to, another example of a use case. We have a project actually that we're part of, which is focusing on how to make smarter tactics using AI. But again, it doesn't change the fact that we still have issues with where do we get the supply chains from, where do we get the rare earth from, where do we get the chips from, and so forth.
And time.
So.
Okay, so that was almost perfect. So this is the part of the debate which these teams will find most interesting because now it is your turn. It's your turn to join the debate. We see some microphones popping up. We have 14 minutes, so about 15 minutes to do it in total. So we have one question. So think about which team you want to ask a question to, because you get to ask a question to either team. So if somebody gets in line ahead of you to pose questions to one team or the other, you're going to have to lane shift, just as a warning. That's making you keen and sharp in these last hours of this conference today. So those are your options. But please, the important thing is that they're here to truly debate one another, and there is no such thing as an incorrect question. Certainly not for this team. Okay, or these teams, rather. Okay, I see cameras going up, but no hands. Okay, they're going up. Fantastic. Okay, let's go ahead and have this the question from the front row.
Yeah, hello, I'm Thomas Gumsheimer. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I've been in business and technology for all my life, literally. One wonderful debate, thank you very much, but my question almost to both teams would be, how would you distribute a budget going forward? How much % for traditional warfare, how much for e-warfare, and how much for AI? Although I know there are overlaps, but maybe you can make a hard cut.
And you're asking this of team... Well, no, you have to make a decision.
I don't have. Well, okay, I'll ask this team on the left-hand side, please.
All right, okay, good. All right, so team no gets response to that. So you had a question, sir, over here.
Thank you. My name is Harold. I'm a student at Academy for Cultural Diplomacy. I have a background in human rights, Master of Philosophy, so my question goes to this team. You were using the word human in the loop. I think the best expression to use is human responsibility and accountability. Before AI, there were human beings who were taking decisions and were being responsible and accountable to the outcome of their decisions. But now, given the growing, there have been documented cases where AI-guided drones have caused serious and deadly civilian issues. And some of them have mistakenly targeted civilian convoys, schools, and hospitals. How can military actors ensure then that the development of AI technologies complies with the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution under international humanitarian law? And is it ever ethically justifiable to delegate life-to-death decisions to algorithms?
Thank you. I was wondering about the kill chain question, so I'm glad we got that in. Okay, team 1, you get 5 minutes to respond to the initial question of how you distribute funds among the various resources that you find vital. Go.
So I like this question, but I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to... No, actually, I get this question a lot. And we always think in terms of measures and ways and means before we think of goals. So I would actually phrase it as, first we need to think about what do we want to do. So what kind of military do we envision? One can even say what kind of defensible democracy do we envision? And that having this vision, and this is sort of like how we imagine using technology as well. What's our attitude? I would even argue that at the moment we think of the war we don't want to fight as an approach to technology, and in many ways we have to think of which war can we win, and then you kind of orient your vision a little bit on that if we need to fight it. And so that's when you start thinking about, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean at the diplomatic level? What does this mean in terms of what kind of technology base do I need? Then we start thinking about how are my forces structured? Are they integrated with other forces? Are they actually standing on their own? So then we start having more goals, and these goals lead then to the concrete measures, and then that's where we get sort of our budgeting from. That would be my argument. And then you can kind of, so I can't actually answer the question of, how much I would spend on EW and how much would I spend on AI or things like that. But I can, we can see certain trends moving in a certain direction. AI is part of it. It's definitely part of it. But in order to support, shall we say, AI-powered armies, we need an ecosystem that can manage this. We need people who are, trained to deal with this. This is also a bottleneck. The human factor, in terms of how many people are equipped to deal with AI in a combat scenario, this is also incredibly important. It's very overlooked. There's a human component to artificial intelligence. So these are the kind of things that I think really need to be given thought to, and that's how I would, that's my answer for you.
I would just say definitely more than the less than 0.5% that were par for disruptive technologies in the last segmented budget.
Okay, that was crisp. You had more time in case you wanted, but that was crisp. Okay, the other side, same thing. 4 minutes on the clock with your response to the human responsibility question.
Thank you. So I'll be taking that question, and I deeply appreciate the question. That's my jam. That's exactly what I've been doing for quite a while. And so I will be taking it apart, and I'll be talking a bit about the legal implications and the implications with regard to international humanitarian law and the laws of war, distinction, proportionality, precaution under attack. You've been mentioning this. And then the ethical part. And to start with the implications with regard to war fighting in compliance with IHL, I was already alluding to the fact that we've kind of said goodbye to this notion of keeping humans in or on loops, because the way that even, for instance, all the discussions that are going on within the framework of the United Nations, be it in Geneva or be it in the first committee, UNGA in New York, the framework really employed to think about this and to write about this is meaningful human control. And so that gives me the opportunity to explain a bit more what meaningful human control means. And it means 3 things. It means foreseeability, administrability, and that's very important to you, sir, accountability under the law. And so if we set up the human-machine team in a way so that the human operator can foresee what will happen if he or she flips the switch and delegates some function in the kill chain, finding, fixing, tracking, selecting, engaging, to the machine, then we have basically the first criteria of meaningful human control fulfilled. So we need to be able to know, simply put, what will happen if I give autonomy to that system for the next 20 seconds or so. That's number one. And we need to train people. We need to have the best technology, the best deep learning models, the best object recognition, and so on and so forth. So that's number one. Number 2 is administrability. So I want to be in a position to be able to control, to administer what the system is doing for as long as possible. And again, trade-offs. People will say, but you're kind of giving away the immediate control in terms of remote control to something like a strike drone engaging a tank for the last 6 seconds or so. To which I would reply, an artillery shell leaving the barrel will be on its own for minutes. and there's no way we can administer it in any shape or form. So again, it's trade-offs. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I'd rather be in a position to only lose complete control in terms of remote control, not meaningful human control, with that system for a split second or so, rather than just lobbing artillery grenades to wherever I think the enemy might be. So it's foreseeability, it's administrability, and if I do all that, I have accountability, which means that if you do that and you did not properly foresee what would happen, or you did not administer the system in a situation where you would have the opportunity to do that, but you didn't do it, then you're accountable under the law. And then we do not have a responsibility gap under IHL. So that's that. Again, thankfully, we've had a debate for 20 years or so on this issue, and it's not that we don't know anything about this. We kind of know how to do it right. And now we are in Germany, in a way, that's what I was saying before in terms of I changed my mind, we call it Zeitenwende. We are in a position where we're no longer, we can't be sitting on a moral high horses and say, ooh, we should be doing it, there could be risks involved. Yes, there will be risks involved, but we know how to mitigate the risks, and we know how to responsibly use the opportunities. Which takes me to the last point, ethics. Is it right to delegate decisions of life and death to machines on the battlefield? You will find me on the record in the papers I wrote that my answer in the past was no. And I would still say no. I would rather live in a world where that's not the case. But again, if we're forced to use it, I think we know how to use it responsibly.
Okay, now you're still in the game, by the way. One of you gets to ask one question to both teams, and then they get to interact, right? So this is like your second round, but this is also your last round. So my point is, whoever asks this question has really got to make it good and applicable to both sides, so no pressure. Those could have gone either way, those last two, so thank you for those. Yeah, seriously. It's a lot of pressure. Oh, we're going to make you hold that. See? Good. We got a female voice in the second to last row. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette Liebeherr. How can we use AI to avoid wars?
Thank you. That's the diplomacy question I have long been waiting for. Okay, 4 minutes either side. We'll start with you guys because you're already in the flow.
Well, if you're, it depends. Meaningful deterrence. The thing is, it also goes into hand in hand. Actually, what the other group said is that it's only owned by many countries, and actually no one owns it. That's not the case. Luckily, the Western Hemisphere, as for now, is owning AI. All the money, all the brains, all the people, they're actually luckily in the Western Hemisphere, as for now. Yes, on the other side, they're catching up. But if you look at what's out there in the market, that's pretty much mostly US and then a little bit of Europe. But then it is the deterrence of if we're able to deploy it and if we're a meaningful threat behind it, saying if you were to deploy it yourself in a sense that we're not happy with this, we're actually going to put more resources into it. So basically it's the escalation. If we're going to own it, if you want to do it, we're going to own you because we have the resources to do just more.
And you can look at the flip side of the coin, the flip side of the deterrence coin, which is usually confidence building measures and arms control. And I can facilitate, for instance, verification of existing treaties and so on and so forth. So there's a lot that you can do, but it all presupposes that there's someone who is being deterred, and so there's no war, who then is also willing to engage in arms control and building trust between parties to prevent war from breaking out in the future. And until that's the case, AI won't help you because it's not a magic wand that you can wave and make problems go away.
Mm-hmm. You have 2 minutes and 19 seconds.
I could add to this. Basically, it's saying, hey, if we're trying to look into the future, like what can we do? Wargaming. Like if we can run simulations how the world could play out and it could help us initially to, hey, we didn't foresee this one event happening or this event. It basically frees us from the limitations of our human minds or human experience that we've read. It frees us. So basically, there are completely new ways of engaging in IR, in politics, in diplomacy that we might have not thought of. So basically, if you run simulations from the past and say, hey, there was two guys meeting, how could this have played out? It's very fascinating what's out there. It could play a role potentially.
And maybe just to add one more thing, I mean, if we look at the war in Ukraine, at the beginning of the war, it was about 80% or so of the targets being destroyed by conventional artillery and only 20% by drones or so. This turned around in 3 years completely. So the other way around, 80% of the targets are destroyed by drones. So faced with Russia's numerical superiority, Ukraine turned to drones early in the war, and the result was that they forced basically Moscow to follow suit. So what you're seeing is that this innovation cycle in a way to try to get superiority is also a fact, and that will lead to maybe also innovation, and that I want to bring in the dual-use character also. I mean, think about all the things in military that we saw that were invented, and there was innovation, and then we have a lot of that also in our everyday lives. The microwave, GPS, the internet. So to say, well, there's only AI and what are the concerns and the consequences for military, there's also so much potential for innovation. And the counter question would be, has AI prevented, or has no AI prevented any wars? No. So as we could see with Russia's war on Ukraine and less AI to that moment, it wasn't, well, the reason for that there wouldn't have been any war.
Okay, team 2, on the diagnostics mix in diplomacy and warfare. Off you go, 4 minutes.
So, wars are launched and waged by people. And this is actually, I kind of like this question from the perspective that in some ways it illustrates what AI does for us, and in some ways it could be a good mirror for ourselves. In other words, when we're training AI, when we're developing AI, when we're trying to use it to solve problems, we may in fact learn more about how we do things than how the machine does it. And so in that sense, I think that AI can provide, not in a direct sense, because, I mean, maybe, okay, here's a funny thought, maybe everybody's sitting on their ChatGPT because, maybe decision makers are like, I need a summary real quick here. And then maybe this becomes the most ubiquitous use of AI, actually, is that people are sitting there trying to make foreign policy decisions, and they just put it into ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT's sort of, using this and says, well, actually, you should probably de-escalate. And then there's like, maybe that is actually what happens, because I've encountered it so many times that, people who are actually quite high up are asking ChatGPT for advice on things. And so who knows, we've been talking about military AI, maybe diplomatic AI. And I mean, AI did win the diplomacy contest. The game Diplomacy, AI actually won that against the human players.
That was 5 years ago, too.
Yeah. So I think in some ways, if AI can be used in such a way that it sort of shows us what we need to know about ourselves, then I think that's one element. A second argument, although I think it's weaker, is sort of the integration of, shall we say, infrastructure, supply chains, and ecosystems. However, that has been done many, many times throughout history, and people who are very dependent on each other still go to war. So I would say that maybe on a somewhat hopeful note, there's this possibility that we learn more about ourselves from interacting with intelligent machines.
I'm so glad you asked that question, and I wish more people would ask that question. Unfortunately, militaries would rather invest in how to fight wars with AI rather than how to prevent wars with AI, but there should be more investment into that question as well. As Dr. Sauer said, AI is not a magic wand. AI is a mirror. It doesn't free us from human thinking. It is a reflection of human thinking. So even in group diplomacy games, AI tools often mirror the groups that they're interacting with, so to say. But yeah, I love that question.
You have a minute.
Yeah, sorry. Many great arguments were already here, so maybe excuse me if I spitball a bit here. But one thing that came to mind is, in order to use AI possibly to keep peace, is to disenfranchise war, meaning you can use AI to simulate diplomatic relations, but on the other hand, it could also be used, I imagine, in a VR, XR context to visualize and make it reimaginable what it actually means to be in a war that is not just sci-fi drone warfare, but down in the trenches. One argument that I hear often is that survivors of wars, crippled, traumatized, etc., are a very strong disincentive to wage war again because they keep the experience within the society. So maybe using AI there as a Kobayashi Maru scenario of sorts, if you like, could also play a role there. And you all saw me up here. I didn't snort anything while thinking about it. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the phase where you get to sort of rest easy again because they have one more chance of going at each other on these arguments, by the way. So they get 6 minutes each to wrap up everything that they've heard, since they also had to play ping pong here. In those 6 minutes, teams, you can divide as you would like. You can have one speaker, you can have more than one, but you get 6 minutes each for your rebuttal, whatever it may be. It can be your concluding, you should end likely with your concluding argument, because after that we will go into the vote phase. And that's when things will get serious again. Okay, so because you finish, you get to start first on your 6 minutes. You can pick up any of the arguments that were made, even from the Q&A, or pick other things apart, restate. You know the rules of the game by now. So 6 minutes on the clock, and yours to start.
Okay, I think it became very clear that we are living in the world we live in, and we all don't want to have war, but it is happening. So we have the chance to either try to seize the opportunities that are there to protect our societies. I mean, it's about that. It's about protecting lives. It's about protecting Europe, freedom and democracy, and nothing less. So we see how it might turn out in Ukraine if we take this serious, if we invest in our innovative technologies. We have all the great people, the minds, the ideas, the industrial capacity here in Germany, in Europe, to do exactly that. Instead of standing here, admiring the problem again, and just wondering or being concerned, then we will definitely lose the great strategic competition that we are in. And we saw AI-based systems are there to protect our soldiers, to protect our civilians. And that is the big advantage that we have to use. And I think that became very clear today. Maybe you want to add.
Hey, I understand AI is makes people go nuts. If you ask any person out there, the answer is usually it's going to take away my job at one point. There's no other technology that people have so much fear in, or fear so much. But on the other hand, we're still in charge of this. As I already mentioned, we are the ones, the Western Hemisphere, who are right now at least putting down the foot on the paddle and saying, hey, we're in charge. We have the world's best scientists in this. We have the best technology. We have the best companies. We have guidance, right? If you look at the US DoD, there's toolkits. So the military has toolkits in place on when to imply or when to deploy AI in their systems. There's rules and regulations that we actually care about. And if we take the foot off the pedal, right, someone else is going to take this. We're not going to be in charge if we draw the money and say, hey, this is really fearsome. We don't want to be in charge because we set the rules. If we win this, we set the rules, and the rules should be good. Otherwise, the other ones makes the rules. I don't want this to happen. Perhaps you want. I don't see this any good chance for us surviving this, but let's keep on this.
I just want to add that, and I hope it's not scaring you, we will use AI to make products which has a better market fit. And our customer is sitting at the front line, not here in a warm room, and we can't debate at the front line ethical stuff because they have to survive. So we will look to this customer, look what is making their lives, save their lives, and they will tell the buyer, which are usually here in this vicinity, and that they should buy this kind of stuff we are producing. And we will use AI definitely to make products with a better market fit.
The question we were asked and the question you were asked is, what is key to winning the next war, and is it AI? And while it's true that you need all kinds of things to make AI work, and you need all kinds of things to have a military, and all kinds of things can go wrong or not, the answer to what is the key enabler to win the next war is AI. And so if you didn't vote this in the beginning, you did it wrong. Please change your mind.
All right, well, that was crisp. You have 2 minutes to filibuster more, but I think Frank nailed it in terms of his argument. I'm not taking sides. I'm a very neutral arbiter here. And on that note, over to you. Other side, 4 minutes on the clock. Start. 4 minutes. 6 minutes on the clock. Start now.
I think, taking a look at this and at this debate, we're not, and here's my point to Frank's point actually, is that we come from a project actually, or I come from a project that really looks at how to use AI to improve tactics. So I should be on that side, in other words, because that's really something we're trying to make. We're trying to help make things more precise. We're trying to help make things more, find out ways to develop tactics in such a way that we don't need to test them as much on the battlefield because we have a good way to simulate them. And that, can lead to a number of different things. But it doesn't change the fact that we, for example, need, technology literate soldiers. We need to organize our armed forces in such a way that we integrate these systems in a way that lead to a general structure that's sustainable. At the moment, I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. I think there's components of it, but I think we can do better. This will create shifts in what are critical resources. So computing power. If we're running, AI-based, hopefully not wars, but if we have to fight with AI, then computing power is going to play a much bigger role. So now we're talking about power supply. Google was thinking of building small nuclear reactors to power their computer centers. So now we're thinking in terms of how much power that really is. Critical bottlenecks in terms of resources. Which chip factories can even produce the kind of material that we need? All of these things change the way we think about the strategic ecosystem for this technology. But it would be maybe not correct to focus on the technology, but really on what our goal is. And then we also have to think about what is the goal of our potential adversaries, partners. This is something we often think, in wargaming, we often think about red and blue. But oftentimes we should be thinking of, well, we actually have other people out there who aren't necessarily red. What color are they? Are they green, yellow, purple? Are they aligned with us? Are they our partners? Are they our value partners? How close are these relationships and how do we fit into this sort of global system? And thinking about how we're related to them in terms of our technological ecosystems is also very important. And then ultimately it really becomes a question of what is our goal? How do we defend Western democracy? And there, AI will play a significant role, but overall it needs to be considered in a systemic sense, in an ecosystem sense, and not as a technological determinant. So that's from my side.
I'd also like to get back to the actual core of the question that we're arguing. We're arguing against AI for AI's sake. AI is part of an ecosystem, as my teammate has put it. For example, in war, what are you disabling using your AI-enabled drones? If you're just fighting against other computers, these are not valuable targets. You are ultimately targeting logistical systems, critical infrastructure. These are things that matter to a country. So that's one point. The other point is AI is not predictable. That's a core fact that we know about, especially advanced AI systems, the ones that really provide an overwhelming advantage. Would you want to leave these decisions to critical decisions to speed up the OODA loop to AI systems? Human beings are not capable of making hundreds of life and death decisions in 2 minutes. So there is no meaningful human control in that scenario as well.
I think final point from my side, and this was said by our group already, people wage wars. I don't say this lightly, I say this candidly, but casualties are the point. It is why we try to avoid war at all costs. And that's why it's easier, if you will, for dictators, for authoritarians to wage wars, because casualties, whether on their own side or whether on the opposition's, are more acceptable. That does not mean that we shouldn't employ AI where it's sensical, shouldn't develop AI and innovate AI where it's sensical, so that we can, thank you for the question, prevent wars where we can. And at the same time, we should know who we're dealing with and what the actors that we're dealing with are willing to, what fight they're willing to put up. And that is not an only AI fightable fight. It is a fight that accepts casualties and tries to commit casualties. So please don't forget that.
Yes, picking up what Trisha said, the main advantage discussed today of AI is the accelerated decision-making process, kill chain, OODA loop, whatever you like. However, we also heard that the point I made about meaningful human control was just not done right yet, for example, by Israel. What we didn't hear is how it's supposed to be done right. I argue in order to do it right, you need to slow down or somehow alter the supposedly accelerated OODA loop and argue it will be done in such a fashion, that it will reduce its impact so much that it's not a key factor, but a tool, albeit valuable. Thank you.
And that's time. Perfect time, in fact. If you are wondering, ladies and gentlemen, if you are in the most current debate that you could find yourself in, as we stand here, and everyone will have had this too, if you pull out your little New York Times app, just now as we stand here, the global AI divide, where AI data centers are located, the geopolitical and geoeconomic divides around AI. So if we hit it on the button in this context, the New York Times clearly is listening through AI technology because they seem to agree. Big reporting piece. So I'm filibustering now because I wanted you to have a couple extra seconds to ponder what you just heard, because we are now going back into our voting phase. And I must say, given the amount of notes I've taken and the amount of questions I still have for both of these teams, I do not envy any of you in this task. So let me remind you of what our questions are as we close out. So team one over here, while AI is an important tool, industrial capacity, logistical superiority, and the ability or willingness to sustain losses are more important to winning a war. All right, that was team one. Team two, as you've heard, has argued that AI is more than just an important tool, critical for developing smarter strategies and more advanced weapons, thereby being key for winning future wars. So the poll is ongoing. Do not be swayed by how these things move as they move. Just vote your conscience. Vote what you heard. And in the meantime, let me just thank this group of debaters for such a civil and engaging debate. I've been in many debates which have not kept the civility as well as you have. So Matthias, Constance, Joseph, Trisha, Britta, Matthias, Lorenz, and Frank, thank you for that. I thought that was very engaging. We covered a lot of ground. So you can still vote and applaud. You have about another minute and a half, 2 minutes to do this voting. And then afterward, as you leave, you can tell them why you voted in which way or another, or they will work on sharpening their arguments for the next time. We have about 30 seconds left here on the clock. I think one more participant voting. See, that seems good. Oh, nope. 2 participants voting? Okay, these are literally your last chances. And otherwise, I would start asking questions, and then that's always a way to extend an event beyond its keep. All right, so I think, based on my clock, this is the There's that one last participant. We'll find you and ask you why you were so slow. What? Okay, all right, I'm going to close this poll officially in 20 seconds. And count this down. I think the positions are hardening, and they are hardening, interestingly, in a very similar way to which we started. So I see that you have a lot to discuss over a beverage or as you leave here. With that, no, I'm not counting that last participant voting. I'm sorry. With that, I want to congratulate Team One for their convincing arguments and the exhausting conversation that seemed to be enough such that the opinions didn't change. They changed, but they changed marginally on the clock. And for all those interested, I'm sure Aspen will give you the exact numbers. I want to thank Team 2 for a valiant clarity of argument. I have many questions for you, so wine is needed. I want to thank all of you for staying alert, alive to the moment, participating in this conversation. Also to those of you watching at home, I hope you found it similarly engaging. I have about 17 pages of notes. If we've done one thing today, I think we have learned, which is the precise point that both teams made, that AI can help afford us as we avoid war, and in the hopefully remaining still rarefied scenario in which we engage with weaponry of war, AI-powered and not. So thank you to both of you, and thanks to all of you.
Thank you very, very much. As always, we do a group picture before we let you go. So if you would come up to the front of the stage and don't fall off. The teams can mix.